Burgoyne Allen. I'm a senior project manager at NYSERDA, and we're going to be talking today about electric school buses. We're going to hear from some fleets who actually have these buses on the road. So thank you all for taking the time to join us. Next slide, please. As a reminder, all of our webinars from previous versions of this are available on our website. So please check those out. Today's recording and presentations will be emailed out to all of the attendees once those are available on our website. And if you missed our last webinar in May, check that out on our webinars page. We heard from Lakeshore in Western New York and NYSBus in New York City about their experience deploying electric buses. So be sure to check that out. Next slide, please. A little bit more about today's agenda. I'll give some brief background information about NYSERDA and what we're doing on electric school buses. Then we'll hear from Naples Central School District in the Finger Lakes and Mid-City Transit in the Hudson Valley, which is part of STA, Student Transportation of America. And then we'll leave time at the end for questions from you all in the audience. You should be able to raise your hands if you want to ask your question out loud. You should also see a Q&A box, so I'll be monitoring that throughout to pull questions from there as well. Next slide, please. So just a quick note on the current requirements in New York State around zero-emission school buses. Starting in 2027, July 1st, 2027, all new school bus purchases must be zero emission. And as of July 1st, 2035, the entire school bus fleet in the state must be zero emission. This state requirement has not changed since the initial legislation in 2022. However, the state education department, NYSED, is going to be rolling out the first of a couple waiver options or extension options for those deadlines by the end of this calendar year. So keep an eye out from state ed for that. There should be more information on that first waiver, which could be up to 2 years. And then there will also be a second 2-year waiver option in the future as well. But we don't have the details on that just yet. But I know that is something they're working on to release by the end of the calendar year. Next slide, please. A bit about funding from the New York School Bus Incentive Program. That's the program that NYSERDA is administering, to provide funding for electric school buses. We currently have $500 million that has been allocated for electrifying school buses in New York State, and we're delivering that funding in 3 primary ways. So through helping school districts work with consultants on fleet electrification plans to give them a customized roadmap for how they can electrify their fleets and meet these deadlines. That includes site assessments, route assessments, load studies, working with the utility. So we try to make sure those are robust plans. We also have funding available for electric bus purchases, as well as reimbursing the costs of purchasing chargers and installing that charging infrastructure. Next slide. In New York State so far, we have around 700 districts in the state. We have more than 45,000 school buses on the road. More than half of those are contractor operated. So you'll hear from a school district and a contractor on today's webinar. But we have been making some progress. So we currently have more than 125 electric school buses on the road. We have funding requests from school districts or contractors for purchases of more than 500 electric school buses right now. So those purchase orders are moving through the process, waiting on delivery. We're working with more than 400 school districts at NYSERDA on those fleet electrification plans I mentioned. So school districts are actively working on planning for the transition to zero-emission school buses. And on the technology side, the average New York State school bus travels 80 miles per day, but most electric school buses on the market right now have a range of 150 miles or more, and we try to make that a conservative estimate. So that means that a lot of the routes across the state are feasible for electrifying today. Obviously, we know there are some hurdles that can make that a challenge, which we'll dig into on the webinar today, but we do see quite a bit of feasibility across the state on which routes can be electrified. Obviously, that varies a lot depending on what part of the state you're in, how long your routes are, but by and large, there are a large share of routes in the state that can be electrified. Next slide. And my last slide here, just to learn more about our work at NYSERDA and how we are supporting districts, providing resources, other just informational content around electric school buses, you can check out our electric school buses webpage, or you can always reach out to us at schoolbus@nyserda.ny.gov with your questions. So first, we're going to hear from Pat Elwell from Naples Central School District. So I will turn it over to Pat.
Thank you, Phil. Good morning, everyone. My name's Patrick Elwell. I'm transportation supervisor and the head bus mechanic for the Naples Central School District. I've had also 40 years of service in the fire department, emergency services, and was 25 years as chief of the department before retiring. And I'm also a EV owner personally myself. We have 23 vehicles in our fleet. 2 of those Type C large buses, 70 passenger buses, are EV. And we also just took delivery of a Chevrolet Equinox EV, and that went into service for student transportation for out of district stuff. Our district is about 120 square miles, and we're located in the Finger Lakes at the southern tip of Canandaigua Lake, right in the middle of the steep hills and stuff. So we have a lot of hilly topography and cold winters and hot summers. Next slide, please. So this chart, our buses went into service in April of 2024, and this chart shows what I tracked in terms of usage daily. The EVs were used on every route in district, and we have 11 in-district routes that we were running, and the buses were able to run the routes completely on one charge during the day. You'll notice in the far column, we track the temperature of the day, and the amounts in the red are the percentages in red are the actual percentage of the battery that was used for those on those routes for that particular day. And in the mileage column, you'll see in parentheses where the mileage was for the first number was the morning AM, and the second number was the PM mileages. And then, of course, in the black is the total percentage, or the percentage of the battery from 100% of where the charge was. Once deployed, they worked very well. The bus drivers liked them. They handled well. The students liked them because of the quietness of the buses and stuff. They performed equal to, and in some instances, a little better than the diesel counterparts that they had, according to what the drivers said. You'll also notice a few of them there that at the end of the day were coming back at low percentages, and that's because they were more of a flatter route. There was not as steep hills, so they didn't tend to regenerate as much as the other buses that were on more hilly terrain. But all in all, they were able to come back at the end of the day with a pretty positive percentage. Next slide, please. So now we're fast forwarding to January of 2025. This took place right after Christmas break. And you'll notice that temperatures, we were in the throes of a very cold winter. And you'll also notice the big thing right off the bat is the total percentage used in the fourth column. And you'll see that the buses were using 120%. Most of them were well over 100%. So they went beyond the percentage of the battery. And that actually, so that meant we had to start doing some midday charging in order to make sure there was enough to get them through the day. You'll notice the percentage numbers in the AM were much higher usage of the battery, and a lot of that came down to heat, trying to get heat. We struggled with getting heat early on, and working with the engineers and stuff, we were able to determine that the reason we were struggling such is that the heat pumps on the buses were too small. And so as it was pushing the coolant through the heater cores were acting more like radiators and cooling the antifreeze too much. So we weren't able to get adequate heat, and they weren't the heat wasn't rebuilding quick enough. So we quickly were able to work again with the manufacturer and the engineers, and we were installed a larger heat pump on the buses, and it was like night and day in terms of usage. So initially, our AM numbers that you see here, 20% of that was just trying to get the buses preheated in the morning to where it was adequate enough to send them out on the road to where the windows were defrosted and you couldn't see your breath. As the ambient temperature went up during the day, you'll see that the afternoon percentages were much better because it was warmer out and we didn't have to struggle as much with the heat. We also struggled with charging because as it was in the negative numbers or single digits, the batteries would fall below their sweet spot, if you will, of what their operating temperatures are, and that would create a lot of the bus did not want to accept the charge from the charger because it was too cold. So we would found out that if we brought it in and it sat inside for about 20 minutes or so, that would bring the battery temperature up enough to where it would take a charge. Then we could put it back outside and hook it to the big charger, and it would continue to charge. And then as ambient temperature rose, we had no problem, late day in the afternoons to charge it up to have it ready for the next day. But there was some struggle, obviously, with cold temperatures. As far as performance in the snow and cold temperatures, they really did very well. They were equal to the diesels, and because of the weight distribution, actually handled much better. The drivers noticed in the snow and stuff, and on the inclement roads. So performance-wise, they ran every day, but as I say, we struggled with various items such as charging and getting heat. Once we resolved the heat problem, however, it just seems to be more struggle that we've continued to have periodically, even now in very hot temperature with the with charging, and that seems to be more of the biggest struggle we've noticed with the use of the buses. Next slide.
Great. Thank you, Pat. Appreciate the real world data you've got there too. We've got some questions coming in for you from the chat, but we will hold on that until we hear from our next presenter. So reminder, if you have questions, put them in the chat and we will reserve time at the end for Q&A. Now I'll hand it over to Dan Higby from Mid-City Transit, part of STA. Dan, take it away.
Hi, good morning, everyone. So basically, just my quick, and going to do a brief introduction, talk about our history, some of the benefits and challenges that we've had with our electric school buses, talk about our community involved, and then also the costs and the funding up. Next slide, please. A little bit about me. I started in the school bus industry in 2004. I know that the room is mixed as far as and district owned and operated. So I'm on the contractor side, obviously. Operate over 400 buses in Orange County, which is about 60 miles north um, directors and incoming vice president of the New York State Contractors Association. I'm also on the City of Middletown Planning Board. I say this because it's relevant when you go to install chargers and infrastructure for your electric buses. It is nice to have a lot. I'm also involved with our Parks and Rec Commission. I'm on the New York State Commissioners Advisory for People Transportation, and also New York Association for People Transportation and National Association for People Transportation. So basically what we have in STA, we have approximately buses on the road currently. We have another 120 or so, and we have more pending grant. Buses delivered across the U.S. and Canada in a different and customer basis. As far as New York is concerned, we have 12 in Barker, New York, and we have 4 in Middletown, New York, with 10 more coming in November. And then we also have 10, we just got great news from NYSERDA that we have 10 approved in Newburgh, late 2026. And we just heard yesterday that we also have approval for 10 in Cornwall, New York, also thinking late 2026. Different locations in New York in application stages as well. Please. Okay, obviously, just touching on this, some of the benefits of electric school buses are for our students, our drivers, and the community. The school, a lot of our school routes are ideal for electrifying because our buses are on a regular schedule. We have options to charge midday or at night. Our drivers are very happy with how quiet they are, smoother ride. You know, our students actually behave better on them. And it also teaches reducing greenhouse gases and emissions. Next slide, please. Obviously, some of our challenges are some of our buses do more than 300 miles per day. A quick screenshot of like what one of our location in Middletown. I mean, we could have buses as far. We could have buses in Yonkers. These are all daily buses or anything. We go as far south as Yonkers, as far north as Rhinebeck, Ellenville, Monticello. So obviously, options are going to be an issue. The upfront costs, you have costs of charger, of infrastructure, the actual cost of the buses. In order to comply for some of the grants, that type of thing. You have a lot of additional planning and training, even just in how you're going to design your parking lot. Let's see here. Obviously, it's a new technology. You also will limit the range on it, and also cold weather, the batteries will not charge as fast either when it's. And then limitations at your specific you may have problems with the town or the municipal for charging space, because the chargers, you do need more of them. Obviously charge your entire fleet with one diesel gasoline tank, where your chargers now are chargers that share maybe 2 buses per charge. Obviously they take up a lot of space. Ability of electric itself, obviously you have to speak to your utility, and working utility can be challenging for a utility. Enough electric for what we have, either grant, what we physically have. They do not want to help future-proof, want to give us what we need, at the end of 2035. Do it step by step by step. Obviously, the buses are. Next slide. Okay, I know we are to 2027 and 2035. I'm sure everyone's familiar. Some of the planning things that you want to do is you want to gauge your stakeholder. Is your district enthusiastic? What concerns do your drivers and community have electric buses? Sometimes it's just simply, I always about that myth bus, show that's on television. And sometimes, a lot of them about electric through. So sometimes, you're playing Mythbusters with some of your stakeholders. Our terrain, our district is too hilly. The electric buses, let's take an electric bus up the hill, up the mountain and up the hill. You generate coming down, our shop lifts will not, but they're not that heavier, that. And the GVW are, in most cases, I believe, say the same. Kind of a myth as well. But obviously, you have to gauge your district enthusiasm, and you also sometimes have to. The bus replacement. We had funding provided from the New York Truck Voucher Incentive Program for electric buses that we received, and now this next onward, which are due in like November. We got through a NYSERDA grant with scrapping. We selected IC electric, and how did we choose? Quite simply, we have a great relationship with our, and they've been very good about helping us and about providing trainings, and that's how we chose IC Electric, and the next generation IC buses in electric. We obviously researched routes, and we selected supported by bus range and charging limitations, and we also just got our fleet electrification plan NYSERDA. So that was charging infrastructure. We the electrification team. We chose In Charge, that partner manufacturers. It was designed prior to discussing the plan with the utility. That was a mistake. Obviously, if you can visit places that have electric vehicles of some kind, and really spend a lot of time discussing your plan and looking at your, before you break ground, so to speak. It's a great thing to do. We sort of I know I spoke about this already, but it takes a lot of extras for the electric school buses. We have transformers, we have switch gear, the actual chargers. They take a lot of space, so you want to make sure that you plan it right and get the most efficient use of your space. Next slide, please. You have the cost of electric school buses. The approximate is 3 to 3.5 times the cost of a diesel. Infrastructure, as a general rule, $50,000 per bus, but obviously it can vary until plan. The cost of electricity versus diesel. We were expecting like a neutral cost, that the electricity approximately the same. And we're learning that the electric actually is more expensive for us to operate than diesel. If you do a cost per mile breakdown of just the fuel or just electricity, the electricity cost is more per mile than a diesel bus. Maintenance, we're expecting a 30% savings on preventive and routine maintenance. long-term maintenance and repair costs are still being, the electric school buses are other charger networking. You might have a service plan on your chargers. You also, some of the charging companies may charge you to, to have your support for them or access their services. One, property tax increase. Obviously, we're a private contractor. Tax on our location. We're surprised taxes increased. You have to have a bill to put your electric charger. With that building permit came a tax assessment. You have a site, you have to pave a lot. You might have to put different fencing, bollards around your chargers, your switch gear, and your infrastructure, that type of thing. Obviously, we have EPA grant. There's future release dates are to be, but you have your state grants, as we know. There's a federal tax refund for infrastructure installed by 2026. Utility funding that may offer by your utility make ready pilot programs. We were able to get some of our our make ready. And then EV charging rates, rebates. Some of your utilities may have a special rate for you to charge at certain times. Next slide, please. One of the major things you want to do in utility rates and your options. Some utilities don't. Some give better rates. Some of them it's the same rates all every day. So you definitely want to learn your utility. Construction costs. Expect things to come up while you're doing construction. Check your suppliers without naming companies. A lot of companies have out of the industry, so you want to check to make sure is for you. And charge scheduling. There's grants that you have to meet. You have to expect the learning curves, and you have to expect naysayers. This is going away. This isn't going to work. That type of thing. Be prepared for that. Operation specific. Obviously, there's so many dependents on that. Please. This is just a few. This is one of the training installation of our chargers that we have. We did trainings, one for our drivers that are driving the buses. Those trainings teach everyone where the shutoffs are and what to do in them. Next slide, please. This is just one of our buses dropping off. Our buses have been in service for over a year and a half. We have 4 of them. All have each. We were very surprised to see, but 3 of our 4, the amount of time that they were on a route, far more diesel bus. Very, very surprised. 100% on route for 3 out of 4 of our electric buses. They literally were used for every morning and every afternoon of their time, except for when they were for DOT preventive maintenance, 60 days or so. So we're very, very happy about that. Next slide, please. Here's my email address and also Rachel Lane. She's our VP of um, questions. Once again, I'm in Middletown, New York, Orange County. If you're in the area, I would be happy to show you our infrastructure. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Pat. We've got some questions coming in and a little bit under 30 minutes left here, so we'll jump into some Q&A. So we got a couple questions on drivers. So I'm interested to hear, one, how did you train your drivers? Was there a getting used to the new bus period of time? And how are you seeing driver behavior impact your range or efficiency?
I'll take that first. So we had a classroom training with the drivers, and the IC Leonards actually came down and assisted in that. And then we went out, walked around the bus, and our buses are basically set up as close to the diesel buses as possible. And so other than the actual driving of it, everything was very familiar to them. The switches in the same location, operations were seamless. And then we just went out on the road, and they all had the opportunity to drive that without students and stuff, and get the feel for the one pedal drive and the regeneration and stuff. And then once they actually got deployed, they basically just started to play with it. The first thing that I did with training is to get them away from watching their mileage, because that's an estimated figure on the dash, and educate them to watch your battery percentage, because that is real-time actual data. And so it became a game with them to see where they could get more regen on their routes, and they adapted very well to the electric buses, and was very happy with the performance and the operations of it.
Great, thanks. Dan, anything to add there on driver training?
For us, we also had the same brand electric buses, so there's switches, etc. We're not, there's no training involved in that. Same thing. We have one of our trainers that drives an electric bus. Take whoever is interested in learning, or if we ask somebody to take an electric bus, we have them take them out on an electric bus. But it's very similar. It's not a drastic difference.
Great, thank you. We also got some questions about data. So I know, Pat, you shared some data. How, for Pat and Dan, how are you getting your data? Are you getting that from telematics on the bus? And how are you analyzing that to look at efficiency, or, what are you doing with data?
We pull the data daily, directly from the bus. We pull the mileage records, obviously, from the routing programs, and we take the charging from the charger data, and as well as from the bus telematics. So we're compiling all of that together, and then, as I said, we also track the temperature of the day, because that has an impact on the operations of the bus itself. And then we just compile it, and we review it daily. And then if we see the driver numbers are creeping up in terms of battery percentage use, I'll sit down with them and say, what's different? Is it, because you're having to go an extra few miles for a certain student, or is your regen not working, as much? And just working with the driver to make sure they're getting the most benefit out of the operations of the bus.
Great, thanks. Dan, anything to add there on how you're using data at STA?
Yeah, we basically from the on command from the bus itself, we can tell how many kilowatt, how many hours per mile the buses are using. We actually share it with our drivers so that we can show them of a driver they're being. We also use the information from our chargers. Our chargers will tell us how many, how much electricity we use for each of the charges. We use telematics or through do anything manually.
Got it. Thanks. A couple people also asked about the weight of the buses. I've heard that because the battery is between the axles instead of at the front or the rear end of the bus, that it can improve handling having that weight distribution. But people are also wondering, whether you're having any issues with bridges and roads, if you're having more tire wear and tear. How is the weight, the increased weight of the bus working out for you?
That's one of the biggest myths that's out there. Everybody says that these buses are so much heavier and they're going to destroy everything. And the fact of the matter is your diesel buses are 33,000 pounds. They have a 12,000 pound front axle and a 21,000 pound rear axle. The EV buses are 35,000 pounds with a 12,000 front axle and a 23,000 pound rear axle. So you're only looking at 2,000 pounds of difference. They are well below your rated bridges, which if they're unmarked are 80,000 pounds. And the other interesting fact is that the EV buses are much lighter than the highway department 10-wheeler trucks that are rolling around on the same roads in the wintertime with salt and plows, and in the summertime full of dirt and asphalt. So the myth that we're going to destroy the roads, I don't see how that's going to happen. The other issue, and a lot of people have brought this up at different conferences and stuff, is the tire wear. When we PM our buses every month, the tread depths on every tire are checked by the mechanics, and they are checked in the same groove of that particular tire, and it's documented monthly. And we have found that the tires on the EV buses were wearing about a 32nd of an inch per month, which is the same as what we're getting on our diesel buses. And that's, with the steer tires. And we run recaps on our rear tires. So they're more of an aggressive tire for us. And we have not seen any additional wear on the tires from the difference with, 2,000 pounds of weight between the diesel buses and the EV buses, and all the routes are about the same mileage and same terrain that they're running over.
Okay, we are seeing an increase in wear on our rear tires. I think if I had to guess, it's because of the brake regenerator. Obviously it's instead of that are going, that are resisting going forward when it back. So we are seeing increased tire wear, but at the same time, we're not seeing brake wear. 4 buses, we had to replace brakes on one of them in 20,000 miles, and it's not because of being cracked when it's cracking. But we are seeing increased tire wear. As far as the weight, exactly what he said. The GVW are very similar, but the empty weight of an electric bus is heavier than. I think it's around 5,000 pound difference. 22,000 pounds empty, 19,000 pounds empty or so. So they are heavy. Good mentioned, the weight is central. if you drive an electric bus, I mean, you'll definitely feel the you know, it drives very solid, like the weight is very evenly distributed, like you said, through the, and all of our drivers that drive them in the winter will tell you that they feel a lot more, you know, it feels a lot more sled for them in the in winter driving. But I can tell you that in 20,000 miles we have tires and tire wear is the same, but we are wear on the rears.
Great, thank you both. We're also getting some questions, not surprisingly, on costs. So, you know, some people are asking about the impact of tariffs on the prices of buses. You know, I imagine that might be impacting electric and diesel. But what are you seeing on bus prices on electric and diesel? And what are your electricity costs looking like for the electric buses?
Yes, the costs are up there on, and you have to be very careful when you're looking at this because the dealers are inflating prices because they don't know where the tariffs are going to land. So normally when you get your pricing, there's like a 4 to 5% increase because they don't know where everything's going to land. Right now with Leonard's, we were looking at almost a 17% increase over what the state OGS pricing was. And when I talked with with Leonard's about that, they agreed that, you know, this was all, they were estimating what this was gonna do. So we were actually able to get the pricing back down where it was affordable within the OGS pricing and the options we put on it. But there is increase in, as there always is, increase in everything. I don't know if you'll ever see pricing. I mean, you never see pricing go down, even in the private sector, in the automotive world. The pricing continues to go up. But yes, you know, the tariffs are driving a lot of it. As far as our electric, there has, you know, obviously the same thing. You know, as their rates go up, your electric goes up. But we're still seeing it's costing us about 68 cents per mile for diesel, and we're seeing right around $1.38 per mile for electric when we do the compilation. So, you know, and again, that will probably increase as rates increase. I know we're with NYSEG, and they have a new program that's coming out the end of October that, and we have already signed up for it because we were on the initial program they had, which basically paid us back the difference of what our electric bill was prior to EV and what it is with EVs. And then we'll be transitioning to their new program that will pay us a rebate for the electric use.
Yeah, great, thank you. And I think, you know, you having higher electricity costs than diesel costs, I think that's unusual compared to other districts we've been in touch with. So Dan, I know STA is operating in a lot of different places. Are you seeing fuel savings with these buses?
I actually attended one of Pat's things at NIAP this summer. I actually compared our data with his. Buses are quite a bit more efficient than his buses. In all of our locations, we're seeing a higher cost per mile on electricity versus just significant as what Patrick is seeing. Or Patrick is saying. It is costing us more per mile on electric versus every scenario, or in every scenario. We did not anticipate. Sorry, people were asking in the chat about using them at this point with extracurricular runs or sport runs or property. We that because of the extra cost per, you know, for electric, and then obviously another, we can a lot more lives by using one of our buses on like a multi-tiered afternoon run versus taking a game, 50 miles away or something. Keep our buses on home to school at this point. We are definitely seeing, love to share the data, but we are seeing that the electricity cost is.
Yeah, and I know that across New York State, the utilities are working on new rates specific to electric vehicles. So those are going to get rolled out. Pat, I think maybe this is what you were referencing. They're going to get rolled out in October. So at NYSERDA, we're eagerly awaiting that because we want the rates to be more advantageous for electrification where possible, or at least to help drive some of those fuel savings. So we'll be looking into those rates, and maybe we'll have another webinar once those are out to see how things are changing. Because, for example, Pat, I don't think you get like a time of use rate where you save if you charge overnight, which is really one of the big benefits of electric school buses, is being able to do that overnight charging when you're off peak, when other people don't need to be consuming electricity. So we're hoping that those changes in rates across the state are going to help drive fuel savings there in the future. So keep an eye out for that, folks, because we'll be eagerly awaiting more news on that. Also in the cost area, insurance is something we hear about a lot. What are you seeing on insurance costs for these buses? Any challenges there, or how has that gone?
Our insurance is the same. There was no increase in rates with our insurance carrier between diesel buses and electric buses. The insurance is still basically the same.
Ours as well.
Great. That was a quick one. We also have gotten a couple questions on fire safety. So, first I just want to say that I think just in the data that internal combustion engine buses are much more likely to have fire incidents than electric buses. I mean, combustion is in the name for a reason there. But Pat, I know you have, in a past life, you were a fire chief, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on fire safety, how you're thinking about that with your electric buses, and any planning you're doing.
Yeah, certainly, because we did extensive training on electric vehicles, because they actually, with the Toyota, they came out in the early to mid 90s. So we did a lot of extensive training on electric vehicles. And, they can combust just as easy as a diesel bus can, because a lot of it's the same components. Obviously, on the high voltage side, if you have a fire in the high voltage system, it's more difficult, and you're more just trying to maintain it until it burns itself out, because the only way to actually put it out is you have to disable the cells in the battery, and only the engineers can do that. But still, on the grand scheme of things, in the big picture, your ICE engine vehicles, whether they're gas, propane, or diesel, they're by far, there's more of them out there, obviously, and you're going to see fires in all of them. The majority of it is on the 12-volt electric side, even with the EVs. It's not the main batteries that are causing issues. It's your electrical fires with your heater motors, things, switches, things of that nature, and grease fires and from overheated brakes, and which is one thing we have had to pay a little more attention to, because we had a situation where the driver called in and said she smelled something burning, and I thought, oh, here we go, we're making national news. And I asked her where she was, and she was, on Main Street in front of the school. So I said, all right, get it pulled over, and so we can, do you see smoke? And she said, no. So we got the bus pulled over, and as soon as I walked up to it, I could tell that it wasn't electrical in nature. It was brake smell. and it was the right front tire, and as I walked up, you could feel the heat radiating off of it. Fortunately, there was no fire, but we learned that because they don't use their brakes, because of the regenerative braking, that the pads were seizing in the caliper brackets, and that's what caused it to have that smell, because they basically were still engaged, and the friction, which causes the pads to crack. I know Dan mentioned that they'd seen cracking and stuff in their pads, and a lot of that is because we had to change our maintenance schedule on brake inspections. So we now do it every 6 months on the buses to make sure that the pads stay free in the caliper brackets and keep lubed. And we haven't had any problems since, fortunately, on that.
Great, thank you. Dan, any insight on how Mid-City or STA is thinking about fire safety?
No, we did do the training for all of our firefighters. I think we did 2 or 3 different ones, but no, nothing different than a diesel bus.
We also did training with not only our local departments, but I opened it up to area departments, and I had departments from 4 different county areas come in, and we did it right here at the facility, and had a bus in the air and then one that they could walk around and look at. And so we did extensive training with the fire service as well on that.
Great, thank you. Another topic we hear people asking about a lot is community engagement. So Pat, I know you've done a lot of this in Naples. Dan, I'm not sure exactly how STA handles that, but what have you all been doing on community engagement, and what are you hearing from folks in your community about electric buses?
When we first started down the road, and that was in 2022, in the first round of EPA, we knew there was going to be a lot of concern and naysayers. So we actually went out on the road and we engaged the community. We went to many community organizations. We invited community in. Certainly the board had time for the community to come in. Our doors were always open here at the transportation facility. People would stop me on the street or in restaurants and stuff, and they would ask questions, and we took the time to educate the community as to what we were getting into, it was going to cost us, the benefits, some of the savings, some of the things we were doing to decrease taxpayer burden. So majority of everything we have done has been covered either through our current budget or through funding through other programs and stuff to maintain it. So there has not been any increase to the taxpayers and stuff, and just keeping them involved and keeping them informed as to where we are and where we're going.
Mid-City Transit, we've done of this past week. Had a community in New Windsor, given our great news in Newburgh, a group that invited us to have electric buses in 2. We're doing an event, Orange and Rockland Utilities, which is part of utility provider. We can drive electric vehicles. One of our electric school buses will be an event with them. So we do pretty much anything and everything that we do with buses now. We try to use our electric school bus, to promote the electrics, to get the word out.
Great. One quick question for you, Pat. So a couple people asked about, you mentioned that you needed to get a more powerful heater in the bus to get more efficient heating. Was that covered under your warranty?
Yes, the manufacturer stood behind it 100%. Didn't cost us anything, and they actually expedited the program for us because I was feeding them the information that we had accumulated in January, and they came up with the idea that they wanted to upgrade the heat pumps. And I said, that's great. I said, but it needs to happen quick because I want to see what happens before winter is gone. And so they actually expedited shipping the pumps here. They took the buses to Virgin, which is our local dealer, and had that turned around within 4 days, and I had it back on the road so we could start to see what benefit it was. But it did not cost us anything other than 4 days of downtime with the bus. But it was night and day in terms of the fix to the problem, and it was covered 100% by the manufacturer. And the new buses now that come out, everyone that they build automatically comes with the larger heat pump on it. So it was just a matter of going back and retrofitting everybody else's buses with the larger heat pump.
Great. Thank you. Well, we are just about at time here, so I think we've had a lot of good questions today. I know there are other questions we haven't gotten to, but we will keep having webinars like this, bringing fleets on to talk about their experience. We'll also keep an eye out for anything we might be planning on digging into the updated electricity rates from utilities that I mentioned for EVs. Pat and Dan, I want to thank you both for taking the time to join us today. For those on the line, also just want to reiterate that we'll be posting the recording and slides online and sharing those with all of the registrants once those are available. I also just dropped a link in the chat to our email sign up. So if you're interested in knowing about any future events we're going to have, hearing any updates we've got, I promise we won't bother you too much. We really just try to use it for major things, but do sign up and get on our email list so we can let you know when we're having more events like these. But again, Dan and Pat, thank you both, and thanks everyone on the line for joining us today. I think it was great to hear from both of you about your real world experience actually running these buses every day and relying on them to get kids to and from school.
Thank you for having me, and certainly anyone I'll hopefully Phil will send out our contact information. Call me anytime, and be happy to talk with anybody and assist in any way I can. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, everybody.